Victoria Jenkins had spent 3 years building her artisan coffee roasting company from nothing, and the last thing she needed was some slick, talking corporate shark trying to swoop in and turn her passion into profit margins. She stood in the converted warehouse that served as her roasting facility, arms crossed, watching the man in the $1,000 suit walk through her door like he owned the place already. "Miss Jenkins." His voice was deep, confident without being arrogant. "I'm Zachary Kane." She'd heard the name. Everyone in the business community had. At 32, he'd already built an empire in sustainable agriculture and fair trade supply chains. The fact that his company had acquired a 40% stake in her beloved Ember and Grain coffee during her desperate fundraising round last month made her stomach turn. She'd needed the capital to expand, to keep up with demand, but she hadn't expected them to actually send someone to meddle. "Mr. Kane." She didn't move to shake his hand. "I thought corporate types just looked at spreadsheets from their glass towers, didn't realize you made house calls." A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement, understanding. His dark eyes held hers steadily. He was tall, probably 6'3", with the kind of build that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk all day. His black hair was neat but not overly styled, and there was a small scar above his left eyebrow that humanized his otherwise sharp features. "I like to see operations firsthand," he said simply. "Mind if I look around? Would it matter if I did?" "Yes." The single word hung in the air between them. "This is still your company, Victoria. I'm here as a partner, not a conqueror." She wanted to hate him. She'd spent years watching corporate entities devour small businesses, strip them of their soul, and spit out generic products. Her coffee came from single-origin farms she'd visited personally, from farmers she knew by name. Every batch was roasted with care, with purpose. The idea of reducing that to efficiency metrics made her want to scream. But he was waiting patiently for her permission, hands in his pockets, looking genuinely interested in the vintage German roaster behind her. "Fine," she gestured broadly. "Welcome to Ember and Grain." The tour should have been awkward, hostile even. Instead, Zachary asked questions that surprised her. He didn't want to know about profit margins or production scaling. He wanted to know about the coffee itself, where it came from, how she selected farms, what made a good roast versus a great one. "I went to Colombia 3 times before I found the right partnership," she explained, finding herself warming to the topic despite her reservations. "The Morales family has been growing coffee for 4 generations. They use shade-grown methods that protect the local ecosystem. Their beans have this incredible complexity, notes of caramel and dark cherry with a clean finish." "You really love this," Zachary said. It wasn't a question. "It's not just business to me. It's about creating something meaningful, connecting people to the source of what they consume. Paying farmers fairly, that matters more than quarterly earnings." His expression shifted, became more serious. "I agree." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Do you?" "Because, in my experience, people who wear suits that expensive don't usually care about farmer welfare or environmental impact. They care about returns. Then your experience has been with the wrong people." His tone was matter-of-fact, not defensive. "My company started because I watched commodity traders exploit farmers in developing countries. I spent 2 years in Kenya working with agricultural cooperatives before I came home and decided to build something different. Everything we invest in has to meet strict ethical standards. That's not marketing language, it's in our actual contracts." Victoria studied him, trying to find the crack in the facade, the slick manipulation. She found none. "Why Ember and Grain then? We're small. We're not going to make you millions. You're growing." You have principles and a product people love, and you're about to hit a wall because you don't have the infrastructure to scale sustainably. He met her gaze directly. I'm not here to change what you're doing. I'm here to help you do more of it. And what do you get out of it? A successful business, proof that you can grow without compromising values, and maybe the best coffee I've ever tasted. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Your Ethiopian Yirgacheffe is remarkable. Despite herself, Victoria felt a small smile tug at her lips. You've tried it. Why do you think I invested? The rest of the afternoon passed differently than she'd expected. Zachary didn't just observe. He rolled up his sleeves and helped her team package orders when they got backed up. He asked her head roaster, Marcus, about temperature curves and first crack timing. He spent 20 minutes talking with her part-time assistant, Sarah, about her graduate studies in sustainable business. When the day ended and the warehouse grew quiet, Victoria found herself sitting across from Zachary at her cluttered desk, actually listening to his ideas. I'm not suggesting we change your sourcing or your roasting methods, he said, leaning forward with his forearms on his knees. But you're turning down wholesale accounts because you can't fulfill the volume. You're roasting 16 hours a day. That's not sustainable, Victoria. You'll burn out. So what? We get a bigger facility, more automated equipment. Turn this into a factory. We get a second roaster. We hire 3 more people who you train personally. We create systems that preserve quality while increasing capacity. His voice was calm, reasonable. You can stay small and pure and eventually collapse under your own success, or you can grow intentionally and reach more people with what you've built. She wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd been so afraid of selling out that she'd backed herself into a corner. I can't afford another roaster. The investment capital can, that's what it's for. And then what? You start making demands, insisting we cut costs. Zachary was quiet for a moment. My father built a manufacturing company from nothing. When I was 15, a corporate conglomerate bought him out. They promised nothing would change. Within a year, they'd outsourced production, laid off half the staff, and degraded the product until it was unrecognizable. My father died 6 months later. Heart attack, officially. But I think it was really heartbreak. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never do that to someone else's dream. So no, Victoria, I won't make demands. I'll make suggestions, offer resources, and respect your vision. That's the partnership. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something she hadn't expected. Sincerity, understanding, maybe even a kindred spirit buried under that expensive suit. One condition, she said finally. You don't just visit once and disappear. If we're partners, you show up. You learn the business inside and out. I need to trust you, and trust takes time. Fair enough. He extended his hand. 3 days a week to start. She shook it, his palm warm and calloused in a way that surprised her. 3 days a week. The following Monday, Zachary showed up at 6 in the morning wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt. Victoria nearly didn't recognize him without the corporate armor. Coffee, she offered, holding up her French press. Always. They fell into an unexpected rhythm. Zachary had a head for logistics and systems that complemented her creative intuition. He organized her chaotic inventory management, negotiated better shipping rates, and handled the administrative tasks she'd been neglecting. But he also listened when she explained why certain things had to be done by hand, why she wouldn't compromise on certain standards. This is why I hate corporate types, she said one afternoon, after they'd spent 2 hours debating with a potential distributor who wanted to cut their per-pound price. Everything's about the bottom line. No one cares about quality anymore. I'm a corporate type, Zachary pointed out mildly. Do you still hate me? She paused, genuinely considering the question. You're different. How? You listen. You don't assume you know better just because you have money and experience. You respect what I've built. She set down her pen and looked at him. Why is that, really? He was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words. Because I know what it's like to pour your soul into something. Before the business took off, I spent 3 years barely surviving, sleeping in my car sometimes, eating rice and beans for weeks straight. People looked at me like I was crazy for caring so much about fair trade certifications and farmer education programs when I could barely pay my own rent. What changed? A small, organic grocery chain took a chance on me, gave me a meeting I probably didn't deserve. They believed in the vision enough to take the risk. His dark eyes held a distant memory. I never forgot that feeling. Someone seeing value in what you're trying to do, not just what the numbers show. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. She'd been so determined to see him as the enemy that she'd missed the obvious truth. Zachary wasn't trying to destroy what she'd built. He was trying to protect it. Over the following weeks, their working relationship deepened. Zachary proved himself invaluable, but more than that, he proved himself genuine. When they hired new staff, he insisted they share Victoria's values. When equipment broke down, he was the first one troubleshooting, grease on his hands and determination in his eyes. When a farming cooperative in Guatemala faced a crisis with their crop, Zachary personally arranged emergency funding and connected them with agricultural experts. "You didn't have to do that," Victoria said when she heard. "It's not even one of our suppliers. They're people struggling to survive doing good work. Of course I had to do something." He said it like it was obvious, like compassion in business was just common sense. She found herself watching him more. The way he interacted with her staff with respect regardless of their position. How he remembered small details, Sarah's thesis defense date, Marcus's daughter's birthday. The quiet way he fixed things without needing credit or recognition. One evening, they were alone in the warehouse doing inventory. The sun had set, and the space was lit only by the overhead fixtures that cast everything in warm amber. Zachary was reaching for a bag of beans on a high shelf, his shirt riding up slightly to reveal the taut muscles of his lower back. Victoria looked away quickly, irritated with herself for noticing. "What made you start Ember and Grain?" he asked, turning with the bag in hand. "You never told me the whole story." She leaned against the shelving unit, memories washing over her. "My grandmother was from Brazil, coffee country. Some of my earliest memories are of her making coffee in this old copper pot, telling me stories about her childhood on a farm. When she died, she left me a little money. Not much, but enough to dream on. She'd be proud of what you've built. I hope so." She always said coffee was about more than caffeine. It was about ritual, connection, taking a moment to be present. Victoria smiled softly. "I wanted to create something that honored that philosophy, that treated coffee as something precious, not just a commodity. You succeeded." Zachary set down the bag and moved closer, his expression serious. "This place has a soul because you put yours into it. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." They were standing close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, could smell the faint scent of coffee that clung to both of them after a day in the roastery. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. "I should go," she said, needing distance to process whatever this feeling was. "Early morning tomorrow, Victoria." His voice stopped her at the door. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I know you didn't want to." She looked back at him, this man who'd somehow become more than a business partner in just a few short weeks. "Thank you for proving me wrong about corporate types." His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that made her stomach flip. "Good night, Victoria." "Good night, Zachary." The dynamic continued to evolve. They started having breakfast together before the staff arrived, drinking coffee and discussing everything from business plans to philosophy to their favorite books. Victoria learned that Zachary had a sharp sense of humor beneath his serious exterior, that he was surprisingly well-read, that he had strong opinions about everything from Ethiopian cuisine to sustainable architecture. She told him things she normally kept private. About her struggle with anxiety when the business nearly failed in its first year. About her complicated relationship with her parents, who'd wanted her to pursue something more stable than artisan coffee. About her dream of eventually opening a cafe that would serve as a community space, not just a business. Why not do it? Zachary asked. The cafe, money, time, fear of overextending, she shrugged. All the usual reasons. What if the reasons went away? What if you had the resources? Are you offering? She said it lightly, almost joking. His expression was thoughtful. Maybe when the time is right, when you're ready. Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. He believed in her, not just in the business but in her vision, her dreams. When was the last time someone had looked at her ambitions and said, yes, this matters, let's make it happen? Zachary. She hesitated, then decided to be honest. I'm glad you're here. I didn't think I would be, but I am. I'm glad I'm here too. The way he looked at her made her wonder if they were still just talking about business. The next morning, everything changed. Victoria arrived at the warehouse to find Zachary already there, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the tension in his posture, the way he was staring at his phone with an expression she couldn't read. What's wrong? She asked immediately. He looked up, and for a moment she saw something like worry cross his face. We need to talk. Her stomach dropped. This was it. Whatever partnership they'd built, whatever connection she'd been feeling, it was about to implode. He was going to tell her something terrible. The investment was falling through. He decided to sell his stake. He was getting married. Something. Okay, she said, keeping her voice steady. Zachary set down his phone and faced her fully. There's something I should have told you from the beginning, but I was worried about how you'd react. Now I'm worried about how you'll react to me not telling you sooner. Just say it. The investment in Ember and Grain. It didn't come from my company's general fund. I invested personally, my own money. She frowned, not understanding why this mattered. Okay, Victoria, my company does well. Very well, I'm not just comfortable financially. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Forbes estimates my net worth at around $3 billion. I'm a billionaire. The word hung in the air between them. A billionaire. She'd known he was successful, but this was different. This was another stratosphere entirely. 3 billion, she repeated numbly. Give or take. The market fluctuates. He said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. I should have been upfront about it. I just wanted you to see me as a partner, not as a checkbook or a trophy or whatever people usually see when they know. Victoria sat down on the nearby stool, processing. A billionaire had been showing up to her warehouse 3 days a week, helping her pack orders and clean equipment. A billionaire had grease under his fingernails from fixing her roaster. A billionaire had been eating her homemade sandwiches for lunch without complaint. Why? She asked finally. Why not just buy the whole company? Why work so hard for a business that's basically pocket change to you? Zachary moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. Because it's not about the money. It never has been. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I don't have is purpose, meaning, connection to something real. His voice was intense, honest. You built something beautiful here, Victoria, something that matters. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to matter to something beyond balance sheets and quarterly reports. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't a game to him. This wasn't some rich person's hobby. He'd been genuine all along. You should have told me, she said quietly. I deserve to know. You're right, I'm sorry. He didn't make excuses, didn't try to justify the omission, just took responsibility. Is there anything else? Secret wives, criminal empires, alien origins. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. No secret wives, no crimes, fully human as far as I know. She found herself smiling back despite the shock. Okay then. Okay. You're still the same person who's been showing up here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Still the guy who actually cares about fair trade practices and farmer welfare. The number in your bank account doesn't change that. She stood up, making a decision. But no more secrets. If we're partners, I need complete honesty. Deal. He stood as well, relief evident in his posture. Complete honesty from now on. Good. She grabbed her apron off the hook. Now help me roast this Brazilian batch. We have orders to fill. The revelation should have created distance between them. Instead, it somehow brought them closer. Zachary seemed lighter, like he'd been carrying the weight of the secret and was relieved to put it down. He started sharing more about his life, the loneliness of wealth, the difficulty of trusting people's motives, the constant pressure of managing a massive company. Everyone wants something, he told her one afternoon. A donation, an investment, an introduction, a job. Sometimes I miss being nobody. Being able to grab coffee without it turning into a networking opportunity. Is that why you like coming here? Victoria asked. Because we treat you like a regular person. You treat me like someone who has to earn respect through actions, not status. Do you know how rare that is? He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're rare, Victoria. She didn't know what to say to that, so she did what she always did when emotions got complicated. She focused on work. But the words stayed with her, warming something deep in her chest. They started spending more time together outside of work. It began innocently enough. He offered to help her visit a potential new supplier upstate, and they spent 6 hours in his car talking about everything and nothing. Then there was the restaurant week where she dragged him to 5 different cafes to analyze their coffee programs. The farmers' market on Sunday where they bought fresh bread and artisan cheese, and sat in the park eating and debating the merits of various brewing methods. It wasn't dating. Victoria told herself firmly it wasn't dating. They were friends, partners, colleagues who happened to enjoy each other's company. The fact that her heart raced when he smiled at her was irrelevant. The fact that she found herself dressing more carefully on the days he'd be at the warehouse was meaningless. The fact that she thought about him constantly was just because they were building a business together. She was lying to herself, and she knew it. The realization hit her fully one evening when they were testing a new espresso blend. Zachary was standing close, concentrating on the crema, and she found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his brow furrowed when he was thinking, the capable hands that could just as easily navigate a boardroom or a roasting facility. What? He asked, catching her staring. Nothing, she said quickly. What do you think of the blend? He took another sip, considering. It's good, rich, balanced, but there's something missing. It needs more brightness. More of the Kenyan beans, maybe, or try the Colombian from the Morales farm. That has the cherry notes that might complement the chocolate base. She adjusted the ratio and ran another shot. This time when she handed him the tiny cup, their fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity up her arm. From the way Zachary's eyes darkened, she wasn't the only one who felt it. Victoria, he said softly, setting down the cup. Don't. She stepped back, needing space. This is complicated enough without what? Being honest about what's happening between us. Nothing's happening between us. We're business partners. Are we? Is that all this is? He moved closer, giving her every opportunity to retreat. She didn't. Because I think about you constantly. I rearrange my schedule so I can spend more time here. I care about this business, yes, but I care about you more. So if I'm alone in that, tell me now and I'll back off. But if there's even a chance you feel the same way, you're a billionaire, she interrupted desperately. You live in a completely different world than I do. I live in the world I choose, and I'm choosing to be here with you. For now. But eventually, you'll get bored. You'll go back to your corporate empire and your high society life, and I'll just be a memory. A quaint little coffee roaster you invested in once. Zachary's expression shifted to something fierce. Is that really what you think of me, after everything? I don't know what to think. This is all so much. 2 months ago, I thought you were everything I stood against. Now she gestured helplessly. You're here all the time and you're wonderful and it's terrifying because I'm falling for you, and I don't know how to reconcile that with everything I believed about people like you. The confession hung between them. She'd said too much, revealed too much. But Zachary's expression transformed into something soft and warm and hopeful. You're falling for me, he repeated, like testing the words. That's what you took from that whole speech. That's the only part that matters. He closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. Victoria, I'm falling for you too. I've been falling since the day you looked at me like you'd rather throw me out than shake my hand. You're brilliant and passionate and you don't care about my money or my status. You care about doing good work and treating people fairly and creating something meaningful. You make me want to be better. Her eyes stung with unexpected tears. I'm scared. Me too. But I think we could be amazing together if you're willing to take the risk. She looked up at him, at this man who'd somehow slipped past all her defenses and made her believe in possibilities she'd long since dismissed. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. Can I kiss you? Instead of answering, she rose on her toes and closed the distance herself. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, testing. Then his arms came around her and she pressed closer, and it deepened into something that felt like coming home and leaping off a cliff simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks. Only weeks. I've been thinking about it since you fixed the roaster with grease on your hands. His laugh was warm and real. That's a very specific thing to be attracted to. You looked competent and useful. It was appealing. She smiled against his shoulder, feeling lighter than she had in months. What do we do now? We keep building the business. We keep spending time together. We see where this goes. He pulled back to look at her seriously. But I need you to understand something. My money, my company, all of that, it's just what I do. It's not who I am. Who I am is someone who wants to make a difference, who values integrity over profit, who's falling in love with an incredible woman who makes the best coffee in the state. In the country, she corrected. In the world, he countered and kissed her again. Dating Zachary was both easier and more complicated than Victoria expected. Easier because they already knew each other so well, already had a foundation of trust and respect and shared values. Complicated because navigating a relationship when your boyfriend is worth $3 billion came with unique challenges. The first time he offered to send his driver to pick her up, she insisted on driving herself. The first time he suggested a restaurant that required reservations months in advance, she told him she'd rather get tacos from the food truck near her apartment. He didn't argue or try to override her preferences. He just showed up with his sleeves rolled up, ready to eat street food and talk for hours. She appreciated that he didn't try to change her life or shower her with expensive gifts. He seemed to understand instinctively that what she valued wasn't money but authenticity, presence, effort. So he learned to make her favorite breakfast. He remembered she liked old movies and surprised her with a classic film festival marathon. He volunteered at the community kitchen where she spent every other Saturday morning. "You don't have to do this," she told him, watching him plate meals alongside her. "I want to. Besides, you said you wanted me to understand your world. This is part of it, isn't it?" It was. And watching him serve food to families struggling to make ends meet, treating everyone with dignity and genuine interest, made her fall even harder. Their relationship deepened as autumn arrived and the days grew shorter. Zachary started staying later at the warehouse, helping with the evening roasting schedule. They'd work side by side in comfortable silence, occasionally bumping shoulders or stealing kisses when the staff wasn't around. He integrated seamlessly into her life, meeting her friends and charming them all with his down-to-earth demeanor. "I like him," her best friend Rachel announced after a double date. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone arrogant, flashy. He's just normal." In a really great way, Victoria smiled, feeling vindicated. "I told you he was different." But being with Zachary also meant confronting the reality of his other life. She met his assistant, a crisp professional woman named Diana who managed his schedule with military precision. She learned about the board meetings and investor calls and international trips that took up most of his time when he wasn't at Ember and Grain. She saw the weight of responsibility he carried, the hundreds of employees depending on his company, the massive impact of his decisions. "Do you ever wish you could just walk away?" she asked one night. They were at his penthouse apartment, a concession she'd finally made after months of him spending time in her cramped studio. The view of the city was spectacular, but she noticed he kept the space surprisingly simple, almost austere. "Sometimes," he admitted. They were on his balcony, her tucked under his arm, both nursing glasses of wine. "But I built something that matters. Walking away would be abandoning that responsibility. It must be exhausting." "It is, but having you makes it bearable. You remind me why I started all this in the first place." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You keep me grounded." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I don't want to be another responsibility weighing you down. You're not. You're the thing that makes everything else worthwhile." As winter approached, they started making plans for Ember and Grain's expansion. With Zachary's guidance and the additional capital, they'd hired 4 new staff members, purchased a second roaster, and were preparing to move into a larger facility that would triple their capacity while maintaining their quality standards. "I never thought I'd get here," Victoria admitted, standing in the empty space that would become their new home. "When I started, I just wanted to survive. Now we're actually thriving." Zachary stood beside her, hands in his pockets, surveying the space with satisfaction. "You did this." "I just provided resources. We did this together." She took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "I couldn't have gotten here without you. Partnership," he said softly, "in business and everything else." The move happened just before Thanksgiving. Despite the chaos, Victoria felt a sense of rightness about everything. The new space was perfect, large enough for growth, but maintaining the character that made Ember and Grain special. They'd included a small classroom area where Victoria could teach roasting workshops, fulfilling her dream of education and community building. On the first day in the new facility, Zachary surprised her with a gift. Not jewelry or expensive luxuries, but something far more meaningful. A beautifully framed photo of her grandmother standing in a Brazilian coffee field, smiling at the camera. "How did you?" Victoria's voice broke. "Your mother helped me track it down. I thought she should be here for this moment." His arms came around her from behind. "Your grandmother's dream lives on in everything you've created." She turned in his embrace, tears streaming freely. "I love you. I should have said it before, but I was scared and stubborn, and I love you too." He kissed her softly. "I've loved you since you looked at me like I was the enemy and decided to give me a chance anyway. You proved me wrong about everything. You proved me right about everything, about doing business with integrity, about staying true to values, about what really matters." They stood in the middle of the empty new facility, holding each other as the winter light streamed through the windows, and Victoria felt a profound sense of peace. This was where she was meant to be. With this person, building this life. Christmas brought new challenges. Zachary's family traditionally gathered at his mother's estate in Connecticut, and he wanted Victoria to join them. She'd been nervous about meeting his family, worried they'd see her as unsuitable or mercenary, attracted to his wealth rather than who he was. "They're going to love you," Zachary assured her during the drive. "My mother already does, and she's only met you once." That one meeting had been brief. His mother, Catherine Kane, had stopped by the warehouse unannounced, curious to meet the woman her son wouldn't stop talking about. She'd been elegant and sharp-eyed, asking Victoria questions that felt like a polite interrogation. But she'd left smiling, kissing her son's cheek and whispering something that made him grin. The Kane estate was exactly as intimidating as Victoria expected: a sprawling property with manicured grounds and a house that belonged in a magazine. But inside, warmth and laughter filled the rooms. Zachary's mother welcomed her like family. His younger sister, Emily, immediately dragged her off for a private conversation, and even his intimidating Uncle Robert thawed after she engaged him in a debate about sustainable farming practices. "You're doing fine," Zachary murmured during dinner, his hand finding hers under the table. She squeezed back, grateful for his steady presence. Later, his mother pulled Victoria aside into a quiet study. "I want to thank you," Catherine said. "For what?" "For bringing my son back to himself." After his father died, Zachary threw himself into work, building the company, proving something to himself or the world, I'm not sure which. He was successful but isolated. Lonely, though he'd never admit it. Catherine smiled warmly. "Then he met you, and suddenly he's talking about meaning and purpose and building things that matter for the right reasons. You reminded him of who he wanted to be." Victoria felt emotion tighten her throat. "He did the same for me. I was so determined to stay small and pure that I was sabotaging my own dreams. He showed me you can grow without compromising what you believe in. You're good for each other. That's rare and precious." Catherine squeezed her hand. "Welcome to the family, dear." The word stayed with Victoria through the holidays and into the new year. Welcome to the family. It felt real and possible and terrifying in the best way. As spring arrived, ember and grain continued to flourish. They'd secured accounts with boutique hotels and upscale restaurants without sacrificing their values. Victoria had launched her educational workshops, teaching home roasting to enthusiastic amateurs. The business was profitable and growing, but more importantly, it was making a difference, paying farmers fairly, educating consumers, creating jobs with dignity. On a mild April evening, Victoria and Zachary took a rare night off to walk through the city. They ended up at the park where they'd had their first non-work outing, sitting on the same bench, eating gelato and watching the sunset. "I've been thinking," Zachary said carefully, "about the cafe." "What cafe?" "The one you told me about. The community space you dreamed of creating." Victoria's heart rate picked up. "That was just a dream. We're focused on the roasting facility." "What if you could do both?" He turned to face her fully. "There's a space available 2 blocks from the new facility. Perfect size, great foot traffic, room for the kind of atmosphere you described. I've had my team run the numbers and it's viable. Zachary, I can't afford, I can. I want to invest in it. Make you the majority owner, same structure as Ember and Grain. This wouldn't be charity, it would be business. But more than that, it would be supporting your vision. She stared at him, overwhelmed. Why would you do that? Because I believe in you. Because your dreams matter. Because I want to spend my life helping you build the things that matter to you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Victoria's breath stopped. I'm not doing this because I think you need rescuing or because I'm trying to impress you with money, Zachary said, opening the box to reveal a simple, stunning ring of sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. I'm doing this because you're my best friend and my partner and the person I want beside me for every adventure. You make me better. You make me remember what matters, and I want to spend the rest of my life building dreams with you. Zachary, marry me, Victoria. Not because I'm wealthy or because it makes business sense, but because I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. Because you're the person who saw past the corporate suits and found someone worth knowing. Because when I imagine my future, you're in every single moment. Tears blurred her vision. I thought I hated corporate types. Do you still? No, she laughed through the tears. Turns out at least one of them has a soul, a really beautiful soul. Is that a yes? Yes. She kissed him hard, the gelato forgotten, both of them laughing and crying and holding each other like they'd never let go. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, just like them, and pulled her close. I promise to always respect your independence, support your dreams, and remember that you don't need me to succeed. You choose me because we're better together. That's a very specific vow. I've been planning this for weeks. I wanted to get it right. She kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise and future and love. It was perfect. The engagement brought joy and excitement, but also careful planning. Victoria insisted on a small, intimate wedding focused on meaning rather than opulence. Zachary agreed without hesitation, caring only that they were married, not how it happened. They chose a small vineyard in upstate New York, inviting only close family and friends. Victoria wore a simple lace dress from a local designer. Zachary wore a dark suit that cost less than his usual wardrobe, but looked perfect because of the way he smiled when he saw her walking toward him. The ceremony was held outdoors under a spring sunset, with coffee plants, imported and carefully maintained, providing unexpected decoration. Victoria's vows focused on partnership, trust, and building a life grounded in shared values. Zachary's vows made her cry, speaking about her courage, her integrity, and how she transformed his understanding of success. I thought success was about growth and profit and market share, he said, voice thick with emotion. You taught me it's about purpose and connection and creating something that makes the world slightly better. You're my greatest teacher and my truest partner. When they kissed as husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers. Victoria felt a rightness settle into her bones. This was her life now, built on love and respect and shared dreams. The honeymoon was vintage Zachary, asking what she wanted rather than assuming. She chose a trip to Colombia to visit the Morales family farm, combining pleasure with deepening the relationships that made Ember and Grain possible. They spent 2 weeks drinking incredible coffee, learning about processing methods, hiking through mountains, and falling more in love with each other and the work they'd committed to. This is perfect, Victoria said one evening. They were sitting on a porch at the farm, watching the sunset paint the coffee fields gold. I never imagined I could be this happy. Zachary pulled her against his side. We're just getting started. He was right. When they returned, they threw themselves into opening the cafe. Victoria had final say on every detail, from the reclaimed wood tables to the local artists whose work decorated the walls. They hired staff who shared their values, paid fair wages, and created a space that felt welcoming to everyone regardless of background or income. The cafe opened in late summer to immediate success. It became exactly what Victoria envisioned: a community hub where people could take classes, attend poetry readings, meet with friends, or simply sit quietly with a perfect cup of coffee. They partnered with local nonprofits, offering free meeting space and donating a portion of profits to community programs. "You did it," Zachary said on their 1-month anniversary of the cafe opening. They were there after hours, sitting at the bar, comfortable in the space they'd built together. "We did it," Victoria corrected. "I couldn't have made this happen without you. You could have. It would have taken longer, but you would have found a way. You're unstoppable when you believe in something." She leaned over to kiss him. "I believe in us." "Me too." As fall arrived again, completing a full year since they'd met, Victoria reflected on how much had changed. Ember and Grain was thriving. The cafe was exceeding projections, and most importantly, she'd found a partner who challenged and supported her in equal measure. Zachary had integrated fully into her life, joining her for community kitchen shifts and farmers' market visits, never using his wealth as a shortcut, but as a tool to amplify positive impact. One evening, Zachary came home with an unusual expression: excited but nervous. "What's going on?" Victoria asked. "I got a call today. From the board." He sat down across from her at their kitchen table. They'd moved into a house together, something comfortable but not ostentatious, with a yard for the garden Victoria wanted to plant. "They want me to step back from day-to-day operations, transition to chairman, and bring in a new CEO." Her heart sank. "They're pushing you out." "No, it's actually a good thing. The company is stable, profitable, and has strong leadership ready to take over. I'd still be involved in major decisions, but I wouldn't need to be in the office 40 hours a week." He reached across the table to take her hand. "I could spend more time on the things that matter to me: the cafe, Ember and Grain, community projects, us." "Is that what you want?" "I think it might be. I built the company to make a difference, not to be chained to it. If I can trust others to continue that mission while I focus on other ways to contribute, maybe that's evolution, not retreat." He studied her face. "What do you think?" "I think you should do what fulfills you, but I also think you should be sure. This is your legacy." "My legacy is what I'm building with you." His voice was certain. "Companies come and go. What we're creating together, the business, yes, but also the way we're living, the values we're demonstrating, that's what will outlast us." She came around the table to sit in his lap, arms around his neck. "Then do it. Step back. We'll figure out the next chapter together." "Together," he agreed, and kissed her soundly. The transition happened over the following months. Zachary trained his successor, a brilliant woman named Jennifer, who shared his commitment to ethical business practices. He remained involved as chairman, but dramatically reduced his day-to-day responsibilities. The freedom transformed him. He was lighter, more relaxed, fully present in the life they were building. They used the extra time to expand their impact. They launched a nonprofit focused on coffee farmer education and microloans. They started a mentorship program pairing experienced business owners with new entrepreneurs from underserved communities. They traveled to visit suppliers, strengthening relationships and ensuring fair practices throughout their supply chain. On their first anniversary, Zachary surprised Victoria with something unexpected. Not jewelry or a trip, but a legal document. "What is this?" she asked, scanning the pages. 20% of my personal wealth, placed in a foundation with you as co-director. We'll decide together how to deploy it for maximum positive impact." He watched her reaction carefully. I've been obscenely wealthy for years, and most of it just sits there. I want us to use it intentionally, strategically, to make real change." Victoria looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "You're giving me control of billions of dollars. I'm giving us the opportunity to do good work together. You're the most thoughtful, principled person I know. Your judgment on how to help people is better than mine. So yes, I'm trusting you with this because I trust you with everything." She set down the papers and pulled him into a fierce hug. How did I get so lucky? I ask myself that every single day. As their second year of marriage progressed, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Mornings spent at the cafe, afternoons at Ember and Grain, evenings working on foundation projects or simply enjoying each other's company. They built friendships with the farmers they worked with, became fixtures in their neighborhood, created a life rich in meaning if not material excess. "I want a baby," Victoria said one night. They were in bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. Zachary's hand stilled. Yeah, I want to raise a kid who understands that success isn't about money, but about making a difference, who sees their parents working hard and treating people fairly and building something meaningful. I want them to grow up in the cafe, learning about coffee and community. I want them to know your heart the way I do." He rolled to face her, eyes shining. "I want that too. I want everything with you. So we're doing this. 8 months later, Victoria stood in the cafe at dawn, one hand on her rounded belly, watching the sunrise through the windows. Everything she'd built, the business, the community space, the life with Zachary, felt like preparation for this next chapter. She heard footsteps behind her and felt Zachary's arms come around her, his hands covering hers on their baby. "Morning," he murmured, kissing her neck. "Morning. Couldn't sleep. Too excited. We're having a baby, Victoria, an actual tiny human." She laughed, leaning back into his warmth. "I know. Terrifying, right? The best kind of terrifying." He turned her gently to face him. "Thank you. For what? For taking a chance on a corporate type with pretensions of having a soul, for building this incredible life with me, for showing me what really matters. You did have a soul. I just had to stop being stubborn long enough to see it." She reached up to cup his face. "Thank you for proving me wrong, for being patient with my walls, for respecting who I am while helping me become more." They stood together in the quiet cafe, in the life they'd built, preparing for the future they'd continue to build. Outside, the city was waking up. Soon the staff would arrive, customers would filter in, the day's work would begin. But for now, it was just the two of them, their unborn child, and the profound gratitude that came from finding your person against all odds. "I love you," Victoria said. "I love you too," Zachary replied. "Always." Their daughter, Clara, was born on a crisp October morning. She had Victoria's determined expression and Zachary's dark eyes, and from the moment Victoria held her, she understood a completely new dimension of love. Zachary was an attentive, hands-on father. He took paternity leave and threw himself into parenting with the same commitment he brought to everything else. He learned to change diapers, walked the floor during midnight crying sessions, and looked at their daughter like she'd hung the moon. "She's going to change the world," he said one night, holding Clara while she slept. "She might just want to live a quiet life," Victoria pointed out, amused. "Then she'll do that brilliantly. Whatever she chooses, we'll support her." They raised Clara the way they lived, with intention and values at the forefront. She spent her early years at the cafe, napping in a corner while they worked, being passed between staff members who adored her. As she grew, she'd toddle around Ember and Grain, fascinated by the roasters and the rich smell of coffee. On Clara's 3rd birthday, they gathered at the cafe for a small celebration. Family, Friends and staff filled the space with laughter and love. Victoria stood back for a moment, watching Zachary lift their daughter onto his shoulders, watching Catherine and Victoria's parents chat with the Morales family who'd flown in for the occasion, watching the community they'd built celebrate together. "Happy?" Rachel asked, appearing at her elbow. "Completely. It's strange 4 years ago I would have said this was impossible, that people like Zachary didn't exist, that money and morals couldn't coexist, that I'd never find someone who really understood what mattered to me. But you did. But I did." Victoria smiled, watching her husband make their daughter giggle. "Turns out even corporate types can have souls. You just have to be willing to look past the suit. Or in this case, past your own prejudices. That too." As the afternoon faded into evening and guests began to leave, Victoria and Zachary cleaned up together, Clara asleep in a carrier on Zachary's back. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Zachary asked, catching her staring. "How wrong I was about you. How right this all feels. How grateful I am that you walked into my warehouse that day and refused to be the villain I wanted you to be." He set down the dishes and pulled her close, careful not to wake Clara. "Best investment I ever made, the business. You, us, this life." He kissed her softly. "Everything else is just details." Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside the cafe they'd built together, surrounded by the life they'd created, Jenkins Kane finally understood what it meant to build something truly valuable. Not a successful business, though they had that. Not financial security, though they had that too. But a partnership grounded in mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of love that made you better just by proximity. She'd hated corporate types until she met one with a soul. Now she was married to him, raising a daughter with him, building a legacy with him. And she wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that brought them here. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I love you too," he replied, holding his whole world in his arms. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. And in the quiet of their cafe, surrounded by coffee and community and love, that was all the happy ending they'd ever need.